Let's begin with some hot news, quite literally. Heatwave has engulfed southern Asian nations. The extreme weather, owing to climate change, has left people reeling under soaring temperatures. Parts of India and Pakistan recorded their highest average temperatures in the month of April. The heat is expected to stretch into May and has led to melting pavements, forcing school closures, triggering health and fire alerts. In India, the northwest region recorded average maximum temperatures of 35.9 degrees Celsius, while the central region recorded 37.78 degrees Celsius. This is the highest average temperature ever in the past 122 years. More than 1 billion people are at risk of heat-related impacts in the region. The heat wave pushed many Indians to move to hill stations in an attempt to beat the heat. In New Delhi, temperatures have soared past 40 degrees Celsius for several days and are forecasted to linger around 44 degrees Celsius in days to come, with peak summer heat still to come before cooling monsoon rains arrive in June.
घूमने के लिए आए थे। बहुत गर्मी पड़ रही है यहाँ पे और बार बार बहुत पानी की प्यास भी लग रही है। नींबू पानी पी रहे हैं तब भी जाके प्यास नहीं बुझ रही है हमें। और इतनी ज़्यादा गर्मी पड़ गई है अप्रैल के महीने में ही, और मई के महीने में क्या होगा।
Meanwhile, for the first time in decades, Pakistan went from winter to summer without the spring season. The authorities have issued a heat warning after recording hottest March in 61 years, as intense heat wave showed no signs of abating. Mercury soared to 47 degrees Celsius in the southern Sindh province of Pakistan, while residents of northern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province witnessed power outage for 10 to 14 hours a day. The intense heat has dampened the lead up to the religious holiday with regular power cuts.
आज कल और परसों ये 3 दिन ज़्यादा इसकी पीक होगी, समझ लें हीट वेव की, कि वही 46 से 48 के दरमियान सिंध के बेशतर शहरों में, नवाब शाह से ऊपर जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स हैं उन सभी में 46 से 48 के दरमियान, और इसी तरह साउथ पंजाब के इलाके, और फिर हो सकता है लाहौर में भी आज 43-44 तक पहुँच जाए।
Scientists have attributed the early onset of an intense summer to climate change. A new study estimates that the climate change could lead to loss of 4% of global annual economic output by the year 2050 and hit many poorer parts of the world disproportionately hard. Now, experts suggest in a baseline scenario where governments largely shy away from new climate change policies, lower and lower middle income countries are likely to see 3.6 times greater gross domestic product losses on average than richer ones. Bangladesh, India, Pakistan and Sri Lanka's exposure to wildfires, floods, major storms and also water shortages mean South Asia has 10 to 18% of GDP at risk. Let's now talk more about this phenomenon. Imran Khalid, the Director of Governance at the Pakistan Worldwide Fund for Nature, is joining us from Islamabad, and Shruti Sinha, Manager of Policy and Outreach Team at an Environmental Research and Action Group, is joining us from New Delhi. Thank you both for making time and welcome to WION. Imran, I will start with you. The heat wave is not just affecting the plains but also the hilly areas, which are traditionally cooler. What changes could this lead to in the coming days or weeks?
This is definitely, usually this is the time when people are able to go out at night time. It's never this hot, and right before Eid, having a heat wave on, this has altered the plans of many people, and people are heading to the hill stations, and there's a risk that the hill stations might not be able to cater to this growing tourist population coming in. That's going to be a major concern. Heat waves are going to affect people in terms of their health, in terms of their well-being. People are trying to commute long distances right before the Eid holiday. That's going to affect their well-being, as well as, they won't have access to safe drinking water, which is increasingly becoming a necessity.
Right.
Our towns and communities, as they grow, they're turning into heat islands because of all the concrete structures that are going up. And so there's very little shade. That's impacting us. So yes, people do turn to the hill stations, but there, there's a concern that our hill stations might not be able to deal with the onslaught of people coming into those areas because of the kind of warming that is taking place right now.
Imran, I'll come back to you. Shruti, the heat waves are getting stronger in intensity and duration. What can the government do to mitigate this from boiling over to a crisis?
First of all, I'm glad we're having this discussion. And to answer your question, there is a lot that the government can do. For instance, usually we see extreme cold as something that will need urgent policy action. There are government plans to build shelters for the homeless when there is extreme cold. But now we must also start treating extreme heat as such a phenomenon. Extreme heat is our reality, and it's an emergency, and it needs emergency response. So this will involve, first of all, having enough and adequate drinking water places in public places. It will involve structures and plans for buildings such that heat is not trapped. It will also involve shelters again for the homeless, but at the same time, certain cooling agents for people who lack shelters, because one of the biggest concern is the people who are working outdoors and living outdoors at this time, who are exposed to this heat all the time. And with that comes medical facilities. There has to be, if we look at global numbers, over 356,000 deaths in 2019 were attributed to heat strokes. So it's very, very worrying, and it has to be looked at as an emergency, and it needs an emergency response system. I'll also add to the fact that Delhi itself has witnessed 4 landfill fires. So wildfires and fires in general are seen to be a consequence of such heat. So there have been landfill fires, and the people who are suffering are the people who work and live around landfills.
Right.
And there is often emergency response does not reach on time. The civil society organizations are really out there providing relief, but we need an emergency relief plan.
Okay. Imran, it is evident that such heat waves could have adverse effects on humans' health. Maybe you can share with our viewers the implications of this to the human body.
Yeah, so it's going to affect us if you're out there, if you're a child who's walking to school, if you're a laborer, if you're spending any kind of time outside in this intense heat, so you're at risk of from heat exhaustion, from heat stroke, hyperthermia, the heat cramps. Now all of these things will impact you, but it's going to be impacting those of us who are most vulnerable. That means the elderly, the women, the children. As well as anyone who is having a pre-existing condition of some sort. That's going to exacerbate that. So as the panelist just right before me was saying, we really need to come up with policies that addresses this, because this is going to become a regular phenomena in South Asia.
Finally, Shruti, there is a huge deficit in the pre-monsoon showers this year in India. What wider ramifications can this changing weather pattern have?
So many that it's really worrisome. First of all, if there's a deficit of rain, then we expect droughts. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has gone out to say that food insecurity, which will be driven by droughts and climate-induced droughts, are going to be the biggest drivers in South Asia. And it's time we start worrying about it, because who are the people who suffer the most when there's a food insecurity? People who lack access, people who are vulnerable, frontline communities. And within frontline communities, it's women and girls who have to forego nutrition, who have to forego food. So it's it's a worrying situation, and this impacts incomes and it impacts livelihoods. So while we look at climate change as a macro issue, it does come back to impact very, very micro issues or very real-time, everyday issues like livelihoods. So it has very wide-ranging ramifications that goes from health to livelihoods to nutrition.
Unfortunately, we'll have to leave this discussion there. I've been talking to Shruti Sinha and Imran Khalid. Thank you both for making time and for talking to WION today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.